Hi, everybody. This is Chris.
And this is Julia, and this is episode number 26 of the Mixology Talk podcast. So, way back in episode number 17, we brought up some things that bartenders wish you knew.
And if you haven't listened to that episode, I definitely recommend heading back there and checking it out.
Since that time, we've had a couple weeks to think about it, and we've got a couple more ideas, so we're going to pick up right where we left off. So, getting started, number one, coupons, Groupons, comps, and free drinks.
So, yeah, if you've ever had the good fortune to get a discount on a meal, whether it's you bought a Groupon or because the manager comped your champagne when you heard it was your wedding anniversary, keep that in mind when the check comes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and own this and say I had no idea about this rule before I started dating Chris. Granted, it was like the crustaceous period. I don't think that's...
Crustaceous.
I think I'm
gonna
thinking
need
of
some
lobster.
lobster crackers. Wow, that was a long time ago.
It was before Groupons existed, so we weren't getting a lot of discounted restaurant meals back then. But in theory, it really makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the waiter, bartender, they all had to do just as much work for you to enjoy your entire meal, whether it was discounted or full price. So, you know, you should really be tipping off the full price of the bill. I know it's maybe a little bit annoying, but in the U.S., that's how we make our money. We don't get paychecks. All of our money is made from the tips that we get from you, the customers.
You get typically you'll get a paycheck, but it is usually minimum wage.
Yeah,
which is just not enough to live on, especially in a city like if you're in a city like San Francisco or New York or things like that.
And it's funny, like one of the things that a lot of people won't understand, it's going to be a hard thing to kind of grasp, is most of the time we don't even get paychecks. Most of the time our hourly rate goes to pay our taxes.
Oh, that makes sense.
So we will literally get a $0 paycheck, and it happens quite often.
No, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I think it's important to remember that promotions like Groupons, and even when a manager comes in and says, you know, oh, this guy's a friend of mine or whatever, give him a free drink, none of that means that the rent is going to be cheaper for that bartender next month.
Right.
You got to remember that they still did the work. They still have to pay their bills. So go ahead. I know it's kind of frustrating because you may not know what that stuff cost. That's happened to us in the past, because Chris has got so many friends in this business. We've had some amazing meals that I'm really grateful for, but you don't always know what it costs, and sometimes you got to estimate. And frankly, you just had an amazing night. Estimate high.
Yeah, and I mean, feel free not to, but guess what? We're going to show up next week on your couch because we can't afford to pay our rent. So
nobody wants that.
You really make the call. What would you prefer?
Nobody wants that.
So that brings us to topic number two, and that is free drinks.
So while we're on the topic of comps, I feel like sometimes people get a little bit too excited about asking for free stuff in bars and restaurants. God forbid there's something slightly wrong with your meal. It doesn't necessarily mean everything should be free.
Yeah, this one really bugs me. You know, if it's your birthday, that's great. I'll tell you happy birthday, but you can't necessarily expect something for free. Most of the time, it's not the bartender's decision. They're going to need a manager to make that call. And they just won't have the time to go out, find one, ask around, because it's your birthday.
Exactly. I mean, if honestly, a lot of people in restaurants are celebrating something. Not everybody's going to get a free drink. That's just not the way it works. Not only that, but like we talked about a second ago, a lot of people don't tip on free stuff. So there's a heck of a lot of incentive for bartenders not to help you out.
Right, exactly. And some of the times, many of the bartenders or places I've worked at in the past, they have a comp check, and we can discreetly buy drinks and it's really meant to kind of outreach into the community and to foster regulars.
Build regulars, exactly.
But once you start to expect that kind of treatment, it's no longer a positive thing. It's a negative thing for everybody.
So is it ever reasonable to expect a free drink? I mean, like, what if there really is a fly in your soup, or the waiter trips and drops the entire tray of red wine in your lap?
Then that's the manager's call. I mean, you know, at that point, it's not about any one particular thing, and let's be honest, a free drink is not really going to make that scenario a lot better.
Yeah, maybe free dry cleaning.
So, right, exactly. But it's all about the gesture and which is given. So if it's a positive thing and you're not expecting it, that is always one of the best ways to receive a gift like that.
Well, and I think that's what's important, is just think of it as a gift. If something goes horribly wrong, then I guess maybe all bets are off, and just do your best to be cordial and, I don't know, get free dry cleaning. But at the end of the day, free stuff is free stuff, and I think it's important to be grateful for that and not to expect it. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And once you start expecting it and it doesn't happen, then you get upset. So
Yeah.
it just turns a very positive thing into a very negative thing very quickly.
Exactly. So number 3 is don't ask the bartender to make your drink stronger.
Yeah, don't ask for extra alcohol in general. I mean, it's really tacky, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it immediately sounds alarm bells for just about any bartender. You're basically announcing to the world that you expect special treatment and that you're not willing to pay for it. So if you want to get a bartender, if you want to get on our bad side, and you want to get looked over every time you want to drink, I really recommend trying this one because that's going to happen.
That's a good tip. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's a good point. I mean, if you're the kind of person who's looking for free stuff, I mean, you're probably not going to be a great tipper.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's
it's a good indicator.
Exactly. Yeah.
And not only that, but I think when you ask for like another shot of booze, you're disregarding the fact that cocktail recipes are recipes for a reason. Someone has taken the time to put together a balanced, tasty drink, and asking for an extra shot in your cocktail is kind of like asking for ketchup on your filet mignon.
Yeah, and there's always a way to do it. So if you do want an extra amount of alcohol in there, you could always ask for a double. So they will obviously increase the amount of alcohol, but they will also charge you accordingly. And it's just, it's a nice easy way around it.
Yeah, you still get a quality cocktail.
Exactly. So not only that, but, when alcohol starts going missing and, the numbers, the profit margins don't start to add up when it comes to alcohol, we're the first people that are looked at.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important to note is I don't think a lot of people, who are on the other side of the bar know this, but bartenders are being watched extremely closely by their management and the owners of their restaurants. And the reason is because spirits are often a huge cost factor in the restaurant. It's a huge operating cost.
It really is. And it's, like I said, it's one of those things that, if it happens a lot, then all of a sudden the entire bar staff kind of goes under the magnifying glass.
Yeah.
And we could all get fired. So by providing extra alcohol, we're really putting our jobs in jeopardy. And it's one of the things that, as a bartender, you shouldn't rely on giving away alcohol to cultivate regulars. You should be able to do that through your personality, through your service, and being warm and hospitable. It shouldn't be about giving stuff away for free. It's not yours to give away.
Yeah, if you had a friend who worked at Macy's, you wouldn't ask him for a free sock.
I
made that up just now.
That. Yeah, it's bad.
So don't be that guy. I said that like 3 times. We should rename this episode Don't Be That Guy
episode, right? Exactly. So now for number 4, pre-dinner drinking, one of my favorite pastimes.
You like all-time drinking.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pre-dinner, post-dinner, pre-breakfast.
Yeah, actually, that sounds pretty good. Bloody Mary, bring it on. Let's do it.
This topic came up a couple weeks ago, actually, when we were in this situation, when I was asking Chris about what do you do when you have a drink at the bar while you're waiting for your table in a restaurant? Are you supposed to pay at the bar before you take your table? I don't know. I always feel so awkward in this situation.
So yeah, this one is actually pretty subjective. So from a bartender's perspective, it's always best if you close out your tab at the bar, and that kind of alleviates any kind of confusion or anything down the road. But if you'd like to transfer it over to a table, that's fine as well. Usually what's customary is just leave a couple extra dollars on the bar as you're walking to your table as a way of saying thank you for the great service. And we'll gladly transfer the bill over to the table, and the server can pick it up from there.
So that makes sense. So let's say I tip the bartender before I leave. The cocktail is transferred over to my table, and so now I have a nice meal, and now the cocktail's on my final tab. Do I tip less on the final tab? Do I scribble a note to the waiter that says skip the bartender? I already tipped that guy?
Probably not. I wouldn't recommend it, but there's a healthy range for most people to leave a tip, and usually what's customary is anywhere from 15 to 20% is a decent tip. So as long as you kind of fall into that range, I think anything you leave is going to be acceptable.
So maybe closer to 15 instead of 20.
Yeah, or I usually tip at least 20%. So usually, if I leave a couple extra dollars at the bar, maybe I'll take, the same amount off the final tip.
But it's really never a bad thing to overtip.
It really
honestly.
Isn't, honestly.
You're out in a restaurant. You're not,
Yeah, exactly. At $5 extra here or there, it
exactly.
really, it goes a long way for everybody.
So what about like private dinners or special events?
So you definitely want to close these out. If you're in a restaurant and you have a private room, typically a lot of the time the bill won't transfer over the right way. It's a weird scenario.
Kind of a hassle.
Right. So, if you have a big wedding party or something like that and you have a private dining room later on, just go ahead and close out your bill. It's the easiest for everybody. And trust me, that's the easiest for you as a customer as well.
Yeah, and you can't just transfer it to get someone else to pay it. Sorry.
Right, exactly.
Nice try.
So, yeah, and now for one of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm sure that any bartender listening is going to relate to this 100%. Don't eat my garnish.
This is just absolutely unbelievable to me. I was joking when I originally asked Chris. We were in a bar and we were sitting there, and I pointed at the garnish and I asked Chris, "Do people actually like reach over and eat it?" And he said yes. I was shocked.
Yeah, it's a huge pet peeve of mine, and it's happened at every single bar I've ever worked at.
Now, I could kind of see this happening in like a dive bar or like maybe a sports bar where people are just like absolutely rowdy and raucous, but you've never worked in either of those.
Yeah, I usually work fine dining, but it doesn't really matter. Even anywhere,
that is
if
so
you're hungry,
weird.
Order an appetizer, order some food. It's going to be better. The last thing you want is like 15 olives.
Yeah, that's just not going to tide you over.
Exactly.
It's not healthy.
And it's incredibly disgusting. It's not a salad bar. It's not a, help yourself buffet. So stop digging your fingers in my, my garnishes, and because these are the same garnishes that I'm going to have to garnish everybody else's drinks in the entire bar or restaurant.
It's really unsanitary. I mean, just disregarding the sort of gross and rudeness of it, it's really unsanitary. And now we're going to have to go and introduce you to everybody who you touched their olives, and you're going to have a really awkward conversation.
Right.
Just kidding. But that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's really disgusting.
This guy licked your olive.
And usually the other thing that'll happen is like if you have like orange segments or, a couple of the restaurants I've worked at, we have olives with pits in them.
Yeah.
What do you do with them? And usually what happens is they'll get a napkin and there'll be a big giant thing of olive pits
Gross.
and like orange rinds, and I'm like, what do you want me to do with that? It's been in your mouth. I don't want to touch that. That's disgusting.
It's totally evidence. That's true. If you're going to steal garnishes, make sure it's something that you can like dispose of. Like maybe maraschino cherries without the stems. I don't know.
I don't know.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it. It's just so disgusting.
That's so gross.
Yeah.
So do people like reach over into your well and like refill their cocktails?
No, that hasn't happened to me since I worked at a really, really long time ago.
That's scary.
Theoretically, if they have really long arms, they can get all the way down
I can totally
there.
see that happening. So don't be that guy.
Yeah, once again.
I had to say it.
Don't be that guy. But yeah, for us, we take time before our shifts to set up what we call our mise en place, our garnish station. And these are the things that we're going to need to make cocktails throughout the entire night and to do it quickly. So when you eat my garnish, not only is it rude and disgusting and unsanitary, but now all of a sudden I might actually go low on some of the stuff I need to garnish my cocktails with.
Yeah, and imagine the bartender, has to tell somebody they're out of a drink because you ate all their olives. Now they're out of that's just, come on. Seriously, don't be that guy.
Right, exactly. So
you made me say it 6 times in this
don't
episode.
Be that guy. So for all you bartenders out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure I hope this is something that never happens. So hopefully this is spreading the gospel.
The gospel, exactly.
The garnish gospel.
So there you have it. 5 more things that bartenders wished you knew. So to all the bartenders out there, what have we missed? I'm sure that you have a bunch of pet peeves that we haven't thought of yet. So let us know in the comments over at mixologytalk.com/26, and we will bring it back with another episode to tell folks about your pet peeves.
Exactly. So next week it is December, and that means it's going to be holiday party time. So we're going to talk about a couple tricks for serving amazing cocktails at your party without having to play bartender all night.
Yeah, have some fun. Don't worry about making drinks for everyone all night. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or Stitcher so you won't miss it next week. We've included some instructions for how to subscribe in the show notes page over at mixologytalk.com/26.
So we'll see everybody next week, and cheers.
Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.